talking POA&Ms a lot these days. We have our Paramify new POA&M product is launching. So we're talking with clients all the time about how they are currently managing all of their POA&Ms. You've been doing this for forever. It's obviously not a very fun process.
Yeah, I don't call it POA&Ms. I call it issues.
Yeah.
Right. It's all about where are they coming from. Back in the day, it's just like, if it's just a control issue, it's just like one thing. That's easy to manage, like in some sort of Jira, something like that. But where it got really crazy is where we would have Splunk look for things in an environment, and Splunk would automatically create tickets, and we created just a monster of data, right? That would be really hard to manage, duplicates, things that were closed a long time ago that just didn't get closed on the ticket, and just really a lot. And so there's always been a lot of data, but now, 2025, there's even more data, right?
Yeah, and we've had clients showing us like their huge spreadsheets, hundreds of tabs.
200.
Yeah, it's crazy.
200s of tabs.
200s of tabs. It is just, anyway, it's a process, right? And as we've talked with clients, we've kind of seen that there's like three main buckets of pain that you're dealing with when you're dealing with issues.
Data.
Number one is data. Good heavens, there's a lot of data to try and honestly just make sense of to start, right? You want to take the data and create a concrete list of issues to address.
You want to consolidate that.
Yep.
Make it small.
That's right.
Right.
Once you've got that list, second pain point is addressing them, remediating, assigning things to people to fix.
Again, it's the sheer quantity of things that need to be fixed. If it's just one or two things, it's like, no sweat. But we're not dealing with one or two things when it comes to managing vulns. There's always new exploits all the time, right? They're coming out all the time, new 0 days, and that's going to continue forever.
Yeah,
right?
And if anything, get more sophisticated, right?
100%.
And so that's the second piece is just trying to remediate all those issues. And then third, it's once you've done all that hard work and you've managed the incredible amount of data and you've addressed the issues, you then have to take all that info and copy and paste it into FedRAMP POA&M format.
Or something else. It could be a FedRAMP document. It could be an executive deck. It could be your board deck. Whatever it is, you're always going to have to consolidate things because, for sure, not even me, I don't want to see a list of thousands of issues. I just want to see what generally is, what's going on. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there could be thousands of issues, but all of those thousands of issues could be resolved by an upgrade of CentOS, right?
Yeah.
So something like that.
So again, as somebody like you've got decades of experience in this, like if you're starting out and you're in the, okay, cool, I've got, 40 scans of all of these things and I've got just tens of thousands of lines of data, like
millions. We're talking millions, man. Easily.
What is step one? What is step one to deal with that?
Yeah, step one is simply just know where your stuff is, right? So you can query your AWS console, your Azure, you can get all of the information, really easily. Typically what we like to do is have some sort of scanner that's approved, that there's, so in PCI there used to be this approved scanning vendor, ASVs, right? So they're trusted because they operate in a certain way where it's going to discover hosts that are listening on your network, right? So you definitely want to have some sort of independent scan to make sure you know about everything that's in your environment. Okay. So find that, set the rules, consolidate a list. That's your...
Step one, where's your stuff at?
Exactly.
Love it. So once you know where your stuff's at, then what?
Then you need to scan it in the correct way. So typically today what we see are 4 different kinds of scans. There's the container scans, which usually don't happen in your environment. That's usually before you go into the environment, you're going to scan it. So using some awesome tool like Gripe or whatever it is, right, to scan those containers and make sure that they're vulnerability free. And then shout to ChainGuard, right? ChainGuard actually produces vulnerability free containers. So you still need to scan those, but it's crazy to me when I see this like vulnerability free container. So that's pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
When you start with something like that. Right? So those are containers. The next thing that you're going to want to do is you're scanning the OSs, the operating systems. So those nodes is anything that, you can have root privileges on and go and do things that would affect the security of data.
Yeah.
Right? So operating systems, databases need to be scanned. And then finally, that's like the back-end infrastructure stuff. Your web application also needs to be scanned, right? So it goes through the same path that you do from, like logging in through the internet. So it goes through that path and it just goes at it and tries to hack things and find issues. And every time you're going to find issues, at least low risk vulnerabilities, you're going to find those. And so, those are like the 4 ways that we're going to be scanning. And usually there's not a ton of tools that are great at all of them, but there are a couple. But for us, the real important thing was, is it FedRAMP authorized, right? For our environment. So if it's scanning something, it needs to be FedRAMP authorized at high for our environment, right? Otherwise we can't use it, or we have to deploy it on-prem, right?
Yeah.
So you could like deploy Tenable on-prem, something like that.
Got it.
Or you could use Qualys or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's where our millions of lines of data comes from. Is we scan our inventory, we know where it's at, and then we scan it for vulnerabilities. And typically most of these tools are spitting out issues by like IP address or something, right? So you've got one issue showing up tons of times.
Right.
And so that's where the managing data comes in, is now you've got to go in and there's a few things you got to do. You want to consolidate by a unique weakness identifier. So like, if it's a Nessus scan, you're saying, okay, let's use plugin ID and let's consolidate the CVEs, let's consolidate the assets, and have like concrete lists of issues.
Right.
You want to auto close things. So if it showed up on last month's scan and now it's gone, like you got a freebie. Let's get that sucker closed and not have to create a Jira ticket around it.
You want to auto close things. And those could be in the thousands, right? Those could be in the thousands, and doing that manually sucks.
Not fun.
Right. You're like, oh, you closed the wrong issue, you idiot.
Then the other thing,
we don't call people that.
We would never do that.
Never.
We're very kind. That's one thing about us that people should know.
I know.
And then the other thing too is you've got these issues coming in, and when the scanning tool finds it, it says, "Oh, this is a critical issue." But you, as a savvy GRC professional, know that issue is actually, not internet facing, or it requires privileges, or something that you can say, okay, we can actually rerun that risk score and auto adjust or adjust the risk rating so that we have more time to deal with it.
All right, so we've got our issues now. There's a lot of them, and there's some that say, I need to fix this by next Monday, because they're critical.
Yeah.
So we're like, I don't know. Can we give an excuse where we don't have to do that? Some people call this a deviation request. Some people call it an exception request. We like to call it an excuse.
What it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a valid excuse.
Let's just own it for what it is.
Yeah. Sometimes, not all excuses are bad. Most of them are, but not for us.
Yeah.
We're making excuses great again at Paramify. They're so good. So first off, let's say you have an issue that's in a low impact, like it says critical, but your whole system is like low impact SaaS.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yep.
Right. So that reduces the criticality right away. The other thing is a lot of the issues assume that this is internet facing, that you can just get into it right away, but that's not usually the case. Most of these devices where you're finding all these critical issues on, most of them are behind they're behind load balancers and firewalls, and then other firewalls, behind that, right? So they're not internet facing, they're network adjacent. Okay. The other thing is are there privileges that are required to actually execute it? So do you need to be an admin to run it? And typically, if you have architected your security program appropriately, right, then yes, right? Because only privileged people are going to have access to touch anything within that environment.
Yeah.
Right. So you can make those adjustments, and you don't just get to say, okay, we're not doing it. Usually you need to get that approved by some authorizing body, right? So the PMO is going to need to say yeah, this is approved, or your agency says, yeah, that's fine. We can we can adjust this from a critical to a low, or not usually critical. They usually go high, medium, low, right? So high, moderate, low. So from a high to a moderate. So that's going to give you a lot more time, right? So 30, 90, 180 is typically what you do. So
awesome.
You want to do that. Sometimes the issue is not even going to matter, right? Like it's like, hey, you don't need to do this because we don't have Windows, right? So it's like a false positive.
Yeah.
Right? And so those ones you could be like, hey, it's false positive. Oh boy, but again, you need to get it approved. And then sometimes the vulnerability is actually a feature. Operational requirement, that's terrible, right? So if you fix it, you're going to break everything, and that produces more risk for the users and for the system, right? So those sometimes are tricky, right? Because there's a critical dependency. So, the moral of the story is don't build crap systems. It's hard.
It's hard.
It's really hard. So.
You could also have the other one too is if we have a vulnerability, but it's not actually our vulnerability.
Oh yeah.
We're using somebody else, and it's their vulnerability.
It's Microsoft's vulnerability.
We're going to bug them about it. We're going to tell them they got to fix their stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not something we actually need to fix.
Yeah, it's a remediation activity. So a POA&M, but we call it a remediation that is dependent on another vendor. Right?
Yeah.
And so that doesn't make the risk any less. It's just helping people understand, like, hey, it's not going to get fixed on Monday because we are not on so-and-so's roadmap, right? In terms of, features. So we have to tell them, hey, you need to fix this. And that's where we get into SLAs and all that other stuff. And it's really difficult. But suffice it to say, there's a lot of moving parts here. There's a lot of data, and it gets really difficult and really overwhelming to manage. And so again, it's already hard enough. Let's make it as simple as possible. So you start with your plan at the very beginning. What data do I have? What components does it touch? And that is the scope of where you're going to be doing this continuous monitoring on. So make that as simple as possible, right? Make it as simple as possible. Use FedRAMP authorized services. Use really reputable companies, right, that are going to be supporting their systems, right? So at the very beginning, make it as easy for yourself as possible. Because it's already hard enough. Right?
Yeah, well, and the work itself is hard enough, but in this remediation phase, you also are going to be assigning out tickets. Once you've said, like, hey, these issues don't matter, these are somebody else's fault, these aren't as bad as you thought they were, you're going to have things that actually need to be fixed. And you're going to be assigning these out to people who maybe don't understand why it's important that it get fixed, or like they see that it's FedRAMP, but like they have a job, right? Like they have other things they have to also do. And so there's a whole nother, carnival of like, how do I track all these and put pressure, make sure they get done on time, make sure I'm past due.
Security work is not usually fun. Implementing FIPS mode doesn't do anything cool for the user experience. In fact, it can break things if it's not set up correctly. So security is usually not going to help you like get features quicker, right? But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. So one thing you can do is maybe you don't want to implement a system that's really kludgy and hard to get to, and you want to meet them where they are. So if they have a ticketing system, make it really easy for them to do the work like right out. So if they want to do linear, great, use linear. If you want to do ServiceNow or Jira or whatever it is, or Asana, meet them where they are, right?
Yep.
And have an easy way to create those tickets where they can do the work where they want to get the work done, right? Because the goal is
great call out.
Implementing the security, right? Implementing and making those changes to your environment, addressing the risk. That is the goal. It is not pushing paper.
That's right.
Right.
Which brings us to our last step. So you've figured out where all your stuff's at. You scanned it for vulnerabilities. You've consolidated those down to issues. Then you've shed off the issues you don't actually need to address. So you have a list of real issues to address. Then you assign those out, you track them, they get done. That's a lot of work. Now, the prize at the end of the rainbow is you get to take all that, here's what we did, out of your giant 200 tab spreadsheet and copy and paste it into a specifically formatted spreadsheet for whatever framework you're working on, like FedRAMP.
Right.
It's the documentation piece that we talked about.
Yep. And if you've planned from the very beginning, I've got my plan, I'm just executing the plan, and it's all on a digital platform, it's all going to be taken care of for you.
Yep. You know what'd be really cool? What if somebody built like a product that just did all of that?
Oh, get out. Get out.
It's the call that we say all the time. This stuff's already hard enough.
Why make it harder?
Don't make it harder on yourself, for sure.
Yeah. I'm glad we had this conversation, Mike.
I as well.
Ciao.